Commitment 2024 special, the Granite State Debates.
There are many parallels between the candidates in New Hampshire's 1st Congressional District. Democrat Chris Pappas and Republican Russell Prescott are both New Hampshire natives who hold key roles in their family businesses. They both served at the State House and were elected to the Executive Council, serving one term together. But they have sharply different ideas on what Granite Staters want in Washington.
We need change, and change is in the air.
Prescott points to his record of fiscal conservatism and local control. Pappas says his record shows a focus on working people and bringing resources to New Hampshire.
This is going to be about how we solve problems for the people of New Hampshire.
Now it's up to voters to decide which direction they want in D.C.
Tonight, the candidates for the 1st Congressional District.
Welcome to the Granite State Debates. I'm WMUR Political Director Adam Sexton, and we're joined this hour by the candidates in New Hampshire's 1st Congressional District, Republican Russell Prescott and Democrat Chris Pappas. They'll be answering questions from me and from our panelists, and those panelists in this hour are WMUR anchors Monica Hernandez and Steve Botari. Each candidate will get up to 60 seconds to answer a question. They'll have up to 30 seconds for a rebuttal if necessary. Those will be granted at my discretion. Each candidate will also get 60 seconds at the end of the hour to make a closing statement. We want to begin with our first question from Monica Hernandez.
We begin tonight with a top issue for many Granite Staters, something that many tell us they are fed up with, and that is how much everything costs these days. Now, some estimates say costs increased for American families by $700 a month over a 2-year period after COVID. Congressman Pappas, a number of economists say this was in large part due to the massive government spending you and other members of Congress voted for. Given we saw the worst inflation since the 1970s, do you still think approving more than $7 trillion in new spending was the right thing to do? And does this change your mind about future spending?
Well, thank you for the question, and thanks to WMUR for hosting this debate. It's great to be with you again, Russell. This is an important conversation about how we can ensure the economy is working for everyone, and I'm focused on what we can do to lower costs. Certainly during those tough pandemic years, it was important for Republicans and Democrats to come together and find ways to keep our small businesses afloat, ensure that our communities had the tools they needed to get through the public health crisis, and to make sure that people didn't become chronically unemployed in our state. And so now that our economy continues to recover and grow, it's important that we focus on those kitchen table issues, how we can lower costs for New Hampshire, because things are too expensive right now. That's why I've taken on the prescription drug companies to drive down the cost of prescription drugs, something that was talked about for a long time in Washington, but we're beginning to make progress on that. It's why I want to invest in affordable housing and childcare in a way that can support the needs of hardworking families in New Hampshire and strengthen our workforce. And it's why I'm proposing to cut taxes for our working families to make sure that we're putting more money back in their pockets and allowing them to keep more of their hard-earned money to deal with increased costs right now.
Councillor Prescott, you have pointed to government spending as a main reason that inflation climbed for American consumers. But the government, with a Republican-led House, still continues to spend trillions more than it takes in. Why should Granite Staters believe that you would be able to buck this spending trend and guarantee to your constituents that that would have a real effect on everyday costs?
Well, first, thank you very much, Adam Sexton and WMUR. While I was a state senator, we had a 1% GDP deficit, and we have a 6% GDP deficit for our spending in Washington, D.C. We need to address it as I addressed it in the state Senate. Make sure we look at the bottom line for every program we have in state government. We do it for U.S. government. What we did in the Senate, we were able to solve a budget deficit of 1% that year. We should be able to do that in Washington, D.C. Also, if we pay attention to the fact that we have a GDP that is rising by 2.8% is the latest numbers, that results in more revenue. If we hold the line on spending, lower spending where we can, line by line on an item by looking at our needs and our wants and making sure we take care of our needs, we can also say by holding the line, we will have money that is given to us by increased revenue due to the GDP increase, and we will lower our budget deficit and drive down inflation.
Next question comes from Steve Botari.
86% of renters in this country want to buy a home but can't afford one. More than half of them worry they'll never be able to own a home. Mortgage rates remain high here in the Granite State. Home prices are near all-time highs still, and housing inventory still remains woefully scarce. So, Councilor Prescott, to you first. Is owning a home still a bedrock of the American dream? And if so, what specific steps could the federal government take to make it more achievable?
It is definitely the bedrock. And where we have a problem with affordability is we have high interest rates driving up the cost of home ownership, and we also have high energy costs driving up the cost of home ownership. And if we can tackle, as I told you in just the last question, the answer that I did, is we must tackle our budget deficit. When we drive down our budget deficit, we can do two things. It'll signal to the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates, and we can secure for our future generations the American dream, because inflation will be dropped and therefore attainable and not always out of reach with inflation. The last thing would happen is that we could start making sure that we do not have a funding problem when it comes to funding our Social Security system. We are having more and more retirees than we have workers, and it's going to come to a crisis. If we don't balance our budget now, it's so urgent to do it now, we will have a further crisis when we're trying to fund our Social Security system.
Congressman Pappas, is owning a home still a bedrock of the American dream? And if so, what specific steps could the federal government take to make it more available to more people?
Well, it absolutely is. And we've got to make sure that New Hampshire is an affordable place for people to call home, those that are just starting out and those that continue to age in our great state. And so we understand from New Hampshire Housing that we're 20,000 units short of where we need to be today to provide for New Hampshire's residents, 60,000 by the end of the decade. So this is a huge problem with respect to the supply of housing. I was in the Mount Washington Valley recently meeting with residents. I met a resident of a new affordable housing development there. Her name's Erin. She was thrilled to finally have found a unit near her family members that was affordable for her. And everyone deserves to be able to access that. And so whether it's an apartment that's affordable or a home that's affordable, we've got to focus on supply. And that's why the federal tools that are on the table, we need to work to expand them. Things like the low-income housing tax credit that developers utilize to build affordable housing. It's oversubscribed. It needs to be expanded. I'm proud in this campaign to be endorsed by the New Hampshire Home Builders Association. I'm a small business owner myself, so I understand the connection between our built infrastructure and the ability for New Hampshire to build. We've got to be partnering with our communities as well to revamp zoning and think creatively about how we can build for the future.
Speaking of expenses, candidates, healthcare premiums are up again this year, 7%, more than double the rate of inflation. The average cost of family coverage is more than $25,000, and half of small and medium-sized business owners say they want the next Congress to address healthcare policy. Congressman Pappas, you've talked about working to stabilize and expand the Affordable Care Act to lower the cost of health care. But if those ideas don't work to lower costs, is it time to change your position and have greater government intervention in the healthcare market?
Well, I support market-based solutions, and that's why I support the Affordable Care Act, which we've got to continue to defend to make sure that people can get health insurance in this state. Healthcare should be a right and not a privilege, and that's why I've worked to expand Medicaid in the state of New Hampshire, and I fought to make sure that there are subsidies available for Affordable Care Act plans that are bringing down the cost of healthcare for a significant number of New Hampshire families. We also have to recognize that prescription drugs are about 15% of overall healthcare costs, and the fact is we've taken on Big Pharma for the first time to cap the cost of insulin at $35, to negotiate lower prices for our seniors on Medicare. That's going to save seniors across the country $1.5 billion in the first year alone. That's going to positively impact about 20,000 seniors right here in the Granite State. So there's much more work we can do, but we've heard some concerning news today about Speaker Mike Johnson and his plans, should Republicans gain the majority next year, about dismantling the Affordable Care Act. We can't turn back the clock. We've got to be going forward and protecting coverage, making it more affordable, and continuing to address the high cost of prescriptions.
Councilor Prescott, just today, House Speaker Mike Johnson did say that if President Trump is reelected, he will push, quote, massive reform to the Affordable Care Act in the first 100 days of Congress. Yeah. Now, last week, right here, you said you would not repeal Obamacare. Do Speaker Johnson's comments change your mind? And in general, what is one specific thing you would push for to lower Granite Staters' health care costs? My mind has not changed. The one thing that we need to do to lower healthcare costs is to make sure our economy is strong and businesses are profitable. We cannot have more tax increases, is what is being proposed
when the tax cuts expire next year. We must stand strong and make sure we do not allow any tax increases at all. It would disrupt our economy, and businesses would suffer, and therefore those businesses that offer health care like mine, health care insurance premiums are paid 100% for any employee, full-time employee that wants it, and that's what we do. If we have a problem with the economy become disrupted by increasing taxes, and we have a problem with having people being on health insurance. I want to make sure that the economy is strong, and how we do that is make sure we drive down inflation, make sure that we balance our budget, cut the deficit, make sure we plan for the future, solving the Social Security issue.
Next question. Oh.
I didn't really hear an answer there about defending the Affordable Care Act. I think that's important given the context of this debate and what National Republicans are looking to do. They've been trying to dismantle it for over a decade. If they get the majorities, they'll absolutely move in that direction. And the fact is, when Russell Prescott was in the state Senate, he voted to block Medicaid expansion, which now covers 60,000 Granite Staters. And he wrote a bill when he was in the state Senate that has raised insurance costs for small businesses, was repealed by Governor Lynch and a bipartisan majority in the legislature because of its impacts on health care in our state. And so I think he just has the track record that's not positive for the people of New Hampshire when it comes to expanding care and holding down costs.
Councilor, 30 seconds to respond.
Well, certainly, I do appreciate the criticism that Chris Pappas has, but it is misplaced. The process of making sure we have more insurance companies in our state, that was the reason for the bill that he says drove down to drive down costs. Also, when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, we want to make sure we keep it, it's in place, and make sure that we do adjustments to it. Why I voted against it when it came to the state Senate was because it actually changed drastically the work requirement for all people in the United States. It made it a socialized system where you do not have to work. If you're capable of working and affording insurance for yourself, that's the way it should be.
Next question from Monica Hernandez.
Now, both of you are small business owners. In New Hampshire, small businesses employ half of all workers. But a 2023 report found that one of the biggest issues for businesses is a lack of workers. What can the federal government do, Councilor Prescott, to help provide a workforce, or is this something that should be left to the free market to figure out?
Oh, yes. No, we need a lot of categories to allow for work visas to come, for having a green card or a work visa card to come to America and help with our unemployment rate here in New Hampshire. We have one of the lowest in the country, partly due to the reasons why I went to the state Senate, is to make sure we bolster our economy by being fiscally conservative. And that's what the result is. We became one of the most, fastest to come out of recession and the slowest to go into recession. This is important that we keep more employment coming from outside of our country. Those that have options need to come as quick as possible. So we reform it to make it faster and easier and open it up for many, many categories for work visas.
And Congressman Pappas, same question.
Well, as a small business owner, when you've met a payroll, when you make decisions about hiring, when you get to know the larger community, provides you with great background and experience that I bring with me to Washington each and every day. We've got 160,000 small businesses in the state of New Hampshire. They define the character of our state. They drive our Main Street economies. And as I'm talking to business owners across the state, from the Mount Washington Valley to Manchester, the conversation begins and ends with workforce. And so some of the issues that I've mentioned around affordable housing are going to be critical for us to building the workforce that we need, addressing the child care crisis in our state, where we have huge swaths of the state that can't access affordable child care. That's important to hold down costs for our families, but also to get more people into the workforce. In addition to that, I've worked to partner with local communities on grant opportunities that are helping to bolster the workforce. Have helped secure a grant for Manchester that's expanding a skills training program in all of the city's middle schools to help give our young people the opportunity to get into a good paying career. In addition to that, I delivered funding recently to St. Anselm College. They're using it to expand their nursing program. And so I think being smart about how we utilize these federal tools to focus on workforce and think about all the needs from housing to childcare is going to be really important.
Next question from Steve Botari.
One of the focuses of a new Trump administration would be to institute wide-ranging tariffs. So there's a lot of talk about putting taxes on imported goods. Councilor Prescott, you're against broad tariffs, saying that they're a tax on Americans. So if elected, does that mean you would stand up to these tariffs, the policy, stand up to President Trump on this issue?
I would, because a tariff, all goods that come into the United States would have higher costs due to those tariffs. We don't need to be disrupting the economy of our country. If costs are higher, which they are today at 29%, imagine if we had tariffs on all the goods that come into our country. We should not do it. We want to keep taxes low, be able to grow our gross domestic product, grow our revenues so that we can balance our budget and prepare for the future. It's the bedrock of government is make sure you're fiscally responsible, especially in the U.S. government, because that's where we can have most effect on our economy. If we're fiscally responsible, we make sure that taxes are low and we balance our budget the way that we should be doing. It's the same way I did in the state Senate. We've got to do it in the United States House of Representatives, and someone has to go down there with the roots and the determination of being a New Hampshire person and get it done, and just like I proved in the state Senate.
Now, Representative Pappas, according to the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation, President Biden has actually kept most of the Trump-era tariffs in place, and in May 2024 announced tariff hikes of his own on an additional $18 billion of Chinese goods, including semiconductors, electric vehicles. Do you agree with President Biden's approach of keeping some of the Trump tariffs, and do you support any other broad-based tariffs?
I think some of them make sense, but we have to be strategic about how we utilize tariffs, and doing something across the board where you're talking about 100, 200% tariffs just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's going to contribute to greater inflation. It's essentially a sales tax on the American people. And I've met with so many businesses over the last few years about tariffs, some that are seeking relief and waivers under the existing tariffs. I think of Nemo Equipment over in Dover. They make camping equipment, a great New Hampshire company. They've been challenged in terms of their supply chains because of the tariffs. I think of one of our great solar companies, Revision Energy out of Brentwood, that has seen high tariffs on imported solar panels, which is contributing to higher costs for their business. So we've got to be smart about how we protect certain industries like steel in the United States, but we have to be mindful about how we're looking to onshore production of critical components. We have to utilize tariffs in a way that isn't going to penalize the American people and our consumers.
Candidates, several plans to lower energy costs are far off, and people definitely need relief right now. Offshore wind in the Gulf of Maine will require massive federal investment before it is ready to go. Next generation nuclear power still several years away from becoming a reality. Many of your constituents are struggling this winter with the cost of high energy to heat their homes with natural gas. Do you support finding a way to bring more gas supply into New Hampshire to bring down those energy costs for those families as quickly as possible, Congressman Pappas?
Well, we have the highest energy costs in the nation because we're at the end of the pipeline. And we've got to make sure we're creating a more sustainable, diversified future with respect to our energy mix. That's why I supported investments in solar and wind and the kind of renewable energy that not only is going to help us lower costs, but generate more energy and ensure that we're more resilient to the way that the planet and the climate is changing. We've got to be responsible about how we develop our energy. And I think that just putting all our eggs in the basket of oil and gas, right now we're producing more oil and gas than at any point in our nation's history, is not a recipe for success. Because number one, we're overly reliant on those sources. We're at the mercy of big oil. And we've got to make sure that we have more homegrown sources of energy that are able to lower the bills. Contained in that legislation that I supported were tax credits for businesses and homeowners to be able to diversify how they source their energy, weatherize their homes, and become more efficient and lower their bills. And so I think we have to be smart about how we develop the sources we need, but also provide our businesses and homes with the resources they need to be able to deal with high costs.
Councilor, do you support bringing more natural gas supply into the Granite State?
Absolutely. We got to do it in a safe, environmentally safe way of doing that, and making sure that when those pipelines come into our state, that they are ones that are very, very, very safe for the people of New Hampshire. What happens is down in Dallas and in Texas area, we have all of this oil that we're leaving the country. It needs to natural gas, I'm sorry. It needs to be able to come up here to the Northeast. If we don't have that infrastructure, we'll continually have the dependence upon foreign oil coming into our country. That's a major part of being secure in our national defense, as well as having the economy grow because of lower energy costs.
Congressman, why should Granite Staters trust that a government-driven transition to a green energy economy will work and result in an energy industry that can actually stand on its own over time?
Well, I think you're mistaken, because I don't believe the transition's being led by government. I think this is being led by the private sector, by businesses and individuals that I meet every day in New Hampshire that are really hungry for renewable energy solutions and a more sustainable future. People that are taking steps in their own communities to be able to develop resources. I was in Somersworth recently. They're putting solar on top of an old landfill, parcel that wasn't going to be utilized for anything else, and they're going to lower community costs in terms of energy significantly. So those are the kinds of steps that can help, and I think government should provide the tools and the incentives to allow us to move in the right direction, recognizing that it's going to be the private sector and industry that leads us there.
And Councilor, you said last week that the U.S. has been reducing coal-fired power plants, and this is causing a problem with supply and driving energy costs up. So would you want to bring coal-fired power plants back online that have been brought offline?
If coal-fired plants are able to be economically and put back online that are ecologically, environmentally safe, yes. However, if we can bring natural gas and invest in there, it's better. So I would say that we have the problems in coal-fired plants is that one a week are being developed in China, creating bad things for our environment. So I wouldn't want to add that bad things to our environment by firing up coal-fired plants here, but we do need to concentrate on having that distribution of natural gas into our state. We have to worry about the people that would think it's not in my backyard, and make sure that we address all the issues with bringing natural gas to our state.
Let's go to a question now from Monica Hernandez.
Councilor Prescott, you have said that you are pro-life, and when you were in the state Senate had a 100% rating from pro-life groups. But during this campaign, you have also said that you would vote no on any bills in Congress restricting abortion because it's now a state-by-state decision. Have you given up on your pro-life beliefs, and how can you have it both ways?
The Constitution gives me the responsibility, when I swear an oath to the Constitution, to respect it. It's the Bill of Rights, and it's the 10th Amendment that says that the states, if they don't give up any rights to the federal government, those rights should stay with the states. And that's concerning abortion. Therefore, if any bill comes up before me as a congressman, I would not take away the state's rights, New Hampshire's right to have legislation for abortion here and stay here. So that is why my position as being a pro-life candidate is secure, because of my oath of office to the Bill of Rights, to the 10th Amendment, to make sure that I uphold my solemn oath. I will not vote for any abortion laws in Washington, D.C.
Congressman Pappas, you have said that you are in favor of restoring the protections that had been in place under Roe v. Wade, but it did allow states to limit abortion access after fetal viability. The bill you support goes even further with no restrictions on abortion, saying it should be up to women and their doctors. But is there a point when the unborn child should have legal protections?
Well, look, I trust women to make this deeply private, personal decision. And he talked about the 10th Amendment, the Constitution. He didn't talk about the people that are being impacted by the Dobbs decision, which he supports. He supported taking away a woman's right to choose and handing this issue over to politicians and judges. And now we have a third of women in America that are living in a state where abortion is essentially banned outright. Women have lost their lives as a result of these draconian abortion bans across the country, and we've got to do something about it. I trust women to make this decision, and we had Roe for 50 years in this country. It provided a level of stability and predictability around the law that I want to work to reestablish. And the fact that the court has taken this right away is not lost on people that I meet every day. I think of woman Susan from Londonderry, who worries about her two daughters growing up in a country where they don't have the same rights that she did. And so that's just outrageous in the year 2024 that we're facing this choice. We've got to make sure that we're electing pro-choice candidates for office that will restore the right to choose, and I'll do that.
Councilor, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Well, thank you for addressing the fact that Chris Pappas believes that I wanted Roe v. Wade overturned.
You support
That's
the Dobbs
right.
decision.
I support our states' rights. I do appreciate Chris for bringing that forward. Making sure that we protect our Bill of Rights is the oath of office. And the Bill of Rights say if the states don't give up that right, it should stay with the states. So that's where I stand.
Well, states' rights is one thing, but what about women's rights? I fundamentally believe that this district deserves a champion for reproductive freedom. That's what I've demonstrated throughout my time in politics, and it's not good enough to be hedging on this. Throughout this campaign, you've said you're pro-life. That's your record. I respect your point of view, but you shouldn't be forcing your worldview on the women of this country that deserve bodily autonomy and to be able to make their own decisions. Anytime you're allowing government in the exam room, it's wrong. It's not what we stand for in New Hampshire, and I want to change it.
I do appreciate your position. I do. But it's wrong. New Hampshire, with their own elected officials, are not, what you would say, just politicians. They only make $100 a year. They're doing it because they want to have public service as part of their record of giving back to New Hampshire. So when you look at local control, is it better to have federal bureaucrats making your decisions, or is it better to have the state make those decisions? That's where I stand. I believe in states' rights.
I've yet to meet a woman that wants her state rep or her state senator or any politician in the exam room with her. This is a deeply private, personal decision. There are situations that policymakers just can't envision, and so we should trust the individual to decide what's right in consultation with their doctor, and that's a difference between the two of us.
A quick rebuttal for you there, Counselor, if you'd like 15 seconds.
I'm good.
Okay. All right, next question comes from Steve Botari.
Adam, thank you. We turn to the topic of immigration. Congressman Pappas, this year you voted for legislation that would strengthen deportation standards for foreign nationals who commit certain crimes, like Social Security fraud or DUI or fleeing from Border Patrol in a car. But what about those who are violating U.S. law simply by being here illegally? Should they be deported, or are you saying people should only be deported if they're doing that plus committing additional crimes?
Well, I think those instances you mentioned, the crimes that people are committing, absolutely. They should be deported immediately if they are picked up and if they are arrested for those violations. With respect to immigration, we've got to make sure that we have a stable situation at the border. And that's why I have pushed the Biden administration to develop policies through executive orders that can help create a more secure situation at the border. But we need Congress to act here. And that's why we do need to take up the bipartisan legislation that is pending and is stuck in Congress right now because of political reasons, because the Republican nominee for president wants to keep this out there as an issue he can use in the campaign, as opposed to allowing us to come together and solve the problem. One of the issues in that bill that will address what you're getting at is the reform of our asylum laws. The fact is, someone shouldn't be waiting 5 years to get a judgment on their case. We need to do that in a much swifter fashion. We should be allowing people to apply for asylum from their home country so they're not undertaking a dangerous journey to get here to the United States. And we should be resourcing our Customs and Border Protection with the manpower and the technology that they need to keep our country safe. That's only common sense, but we need Congress to act to address this problem.
And Councilor Prescott, one of former President Trump's priorities, if reelected, is a mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. You recently said that deporting, that is, immigrants who are here illegally would be money well spent to ensure American safety. There's a recent UNH report out saying that these deportations at the scale that former President Trump is talking about wouldn't just have the initial cost, somewhere in the range of $300 billion of government spending. It would also result in losses to the U.S. economy somewhere in the range of $700 billion to $1.7 trillion. You've talked a lot here tonight about fiscal conservatism. Is the economic impact worth it?
Yes, because we need to enforce our laws. Those laws were promulgated by Republicans and Democrats. Our laws have allowances for asylum. If we determine, instead of just letting people come here illegally, just letting them through the gate, if we determine when they're here, if they actually can go back to their home country and still be safe and they don't qualify for asylum, that is what we should do, because that is where you have to draw the line, is our laws that are promulgated by Democrat and also Republican administrations. If we don't, what we're doing is saying it's okay to cut in line, it's okay to pay a mobster group down in Mexico and have them bring you across the border. That's what's causing all of this drug trafficking. because people can just jump the line. If we are very, very strong on our border policies, we can reduce illegal immigration by 70% overnight. We need to do that.
Okay, we've hit the halfway point of this debate. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us.